स्वच्छन्दमं नेच्छया तद्योतं परशम्भवं तु चरणं दीपाङ्कुरग्राहिणां प्रत्यक्षाक्षरविग्रहं गुरुपरं ध्यायेत् विभुं शाश्वतम् पुरुषार्थसिद्ध्यर्थे जपे विनियोगः सुता उवाच कैलासशिखरे रम्ये भक्तिसन्धाननायकं प्रणम्य पार्वती भक्त्या शङ्करं वय पृच्छति श्री उवाच दुर्लभं कृष्णलोकेषु तत्तुरुष्वावदम्यहं गुरुर्विना ब्रह्मणान्यात् सत्यं सत्यं वरानने वेदशास्त्रपुराणानि इतिहासानि च मन्त्रयन्त्राणि विद्याश्च स्मृतिरुचातनानिकाम् शिवशक्तादीनि अन्यानि विविधानि च अपभ्रंशकराणि जीवनं भ्रान्तते च साम् यज्ञो व्रतं तपोदानं जपस्तीर्थं च चैव च गुरुतमविज्ञाय मूलस्ते चरते जनाः मरुनान्यं सत्यं सत्यं न संशयः कालवर्तं प्रयाणास्तु कर्तव्यो हि मनीषिभिः गुरुविद्या जगन्माया ज्ञानसम्भवा प्रकाशेन गुरुशब्देन कथ्यते सर्वपापविशुद्धात्मा श्रीगुरु पारसेवनात् हे ब्रह्म भवेद्यस्मात् स्वाकृपार्थं वदामि ते गुरुपारं भुजं स्मृत्वा जलं शिरसि धारयेत् सर्वतीर्थवरास्य सम्प्राप्नोति फलं नराः शोषणं पङ्कस्य दीपनं ज्ञानतेजसां गुरुपाररकं सम्यक् संसारानवतारकम् अज्ञानमूलारणं जन्मकर्मानिवारणं ज्ञानवैराग्यसिद्ध्यर्थं गुरुपाररकं पिबेत् गुरुपाररकं पीत्वा गुरुरुश्रेष्ठभोजनं गुरुमूर्ते सराध्यानं गुरुमन्त्रं सराजपेत् काशीक्षेत्रं च निवासं जानवी चरणोरकं गुरुविश्वेश्वरा साक्षात् तारकं ब्रह्मनिश्चितं गुरुपारकं यातु कायसुखसौक्षयो वचः तीर्थराज प्रयागश्च गुरुमूर्त्यै नमो नमः गुरुमूर्तिं स्मरे नित्यं गुरुनामासराजपेत् गुरुराञ्जं प्रकुर्वीता गुरुरन्यान् भावयेत् गुरुवक्त्रार्चितं ब्रह्म प्राप्यते तत्प्रसादतः गुरुध्यानं सदा कुर्यात् कुलस्वी स्वापतिर्यथा स्वाश्रमं prapyate. Tukarasvandakarascha Dukkarastejoshate Ajnanagrasakam Brahma Dureva Karapratamo Varno Mayadi Guna Bhasaka Dukkaram Yo Brahma Nashanam Evam Guru Param Shreshtam Devanam Api Durlabam Ahu Ganeshima Gandharvesha Prapujyate Dhruvam Tesham Sarvesham Nasitadvam Guru Param Asanam Shayanam Vastram Bhushanam Vanadikam Sadhakena Pradataviyam Guru Santosharam Karyam Swajivitvam Nivedaye Karmana Manasavacha Nityamaradhaye Gurum Dirghadandam Namaskurtya Nirlajo Guru Sanidom Shariran Indriyam Pranan Sadguru Vyonivedaye Atmatararikam Sarvam Sadguru Vyonivedaye Nikita Basma Vishta Durgani Malamutrakam Sreshmaraptam Sachamamsa Panchayena Varanane Samsara Vriksha Maruta Kantandonar Karnave Yena Cheva Druta Sarve Asme Shri Gurave Namah Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Reva Para Brahma Asme Shri Gurave Namah Ekave Jagatameva Samsaranavasetave Prabhave Sarva Vidyanam Shambhave Gurave Namah Ajnanati Mirandasya Jnanajana Shalakaya Chakshuvamilitam Yena Asme Shri Gurave Namah Tame Mata Tvam Bandhu Tvam Sadevata Samsara Pratibhorartam Asme Shri Gurave Namah Jagat Satyam Ya Prakashena Bhaktita Yaranandena Nandanti Asme Shri Gurave Namah Yasya Stitya Satyamidam Ya Bhati Bhanarupatam Priyam Putra Riya Pritya Asme Shri Gurave Namah Yena Chetayate Idam Chittam Chetayate Nayam Jagrat Varna Shashipyari Asme Shri Gurave Namah Yasya Dhyana Rina Vishwan Nadrusham Vina Beratam Sarikaru Parupaya Asme Shri Gurave Namah Yasya Matam Tasya Matam Matam Yasya Vedasam Ananya Bhava Bhavaya Asme Shri Gurave Namah Yasya Karana Rupasya Karya Rupena Bhaktiyan Karya Karana Rupaya Asme Shri Gurave मनश्चित्तगोचरां श्वेतरक्ता प्रभावीनां Shiva Shaktyatmakam Param Tukaram cha gunachitam Tukaram rupavarjitam Gunatita svarupam cha Yoradyatsa gurusmritam Atrinetra sarvasakshi Achatur bhaurachita Achatur vanaro brahma Shri Guru Katita Priye Ayam Ayanjalir Bhado Dayasa Gara Vridaye Yadanugrato Jantus Chitra Samsara Mukti Bhat Shri Guru Paramam Rupam Viveka Chakshushomutam Mandavajnana Pashyanti Anda Suryodayam Yatam Srinatacharana Dvambam Yasyam Shri Virajate Tasye Dishe Namaskuryat Bhaktya Pratidinam Priye Tasye Dishe Satatamanjalesha Arye Lakshipyate Mokaritam Marupir Buddhishcha Jagarti Yatra Bhagavan Guru Chakravarti Vishwadaya Pranatana Nitya Sakshi Srinakari Gurutrayam Ganapati Nitatrayam Bhairavam Siddhokamba Tukatrayam Parayugam Rutikramam Mandalam Nirandra Satasusta Shasti Navakam Niravali Panchakam Srimam Malini Mantra Raja Saitam Vande Gurum Mandalam Abhyase Sakale Siddhirga Manile Yadi Prare Dushkare Pranayama Shatera Nekta Karane Dukama Kir Durjaye Yasmina Virite Vina Shati Bali Vayu Swayam Takshana Praptam Tatsajam Svabhava Manisham Sevadvamekam Gurum Padeshika Sheva Sharira Chittanam Bhavedana Tasya Shivasya Chintanam Swadeshika Sheva Chanama Kirtanam Bhavedana Tasya Shivasya Kirtanam Yapparareno Kanika Kapi Samsara Varide Setu Bandaya Tenatam Deshikantam Upasmahe Yasmatanuglalava Maharadhyana Mutsaje Hasme Shire Shikendraya Namashabhishta Siddhaye Parabjam Sava Samsara Davanala Vinashakam Brahmarandre Sitam Bhoja Madhyastam Chandra Mandale Akatari Tire Kaje Sahasradala Mandale Hamsa Bhashva Shikone Chat Smaritan Madhya Gangurum Sakala Bhuvana Shrishti Kalpita Shesha Pushti Nikilani Gama Drushti Sambaram Vyartha Drushti Avaguna Parimarstis Tappararthika Drushti Avaguna Paramishti Moksha Margika Drushti Sakala Bhuvana Ranga Sapana Sammayasti Sakarunara Savrusti Advamala Samasti Sakala Samaya Shushti Satchi तद्दुरितात्समीपके तरन्तरस्य सर्वस्य तरु सर्वस्य भायता अजोऽहमजरोऽहं च अनधिनिधनः स्वयम् अविकार श्रीरानन्द अनियमचो महान् अपूर्वाणं परं नित्यं स्वयं ज्योतिर्निरामयम् धीरजं परमाकाशं ध्रुवमानन्दमव्ययम् प्रत्य समेतीय मानुमानश्चतुष्टयम् यस्य च मातपुवेदा देशिकं च सरस्मरेत् अनन्य भवं कार्यं तं वरमिमामते सारुज्वं च मया दृष्ट्वा मयि तिष्ठति सम्प्रताम् अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्परं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः सर्वशुद्धिशिरोरत्न विरजिता परं भुजा वेदान्तं भुजसूर्ययास् तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः यस्य स्मरणमद्रेण ज्ञानमुपाद्यते स्वयं य एव सर्वसम्प्राप्तिः तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः चैतन्यं शाश्वतं शान्तं व्योमतीतं निरञ्जनं नारबिन्दुकलातीतं तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः तथा चैवाचराचरं व्याप्तं येन जगत्सर्वं तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः ज्ञानशक्तिसमारुदास् सर्वमलविभूषितः मुक्तिप्रदातायास् तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः अनेककर्मसम्प्राप्तं सर्वकर्मविधायिने स्वात्मज्ञानप्रभावेन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः न गुरोररिकं तत्त्वं न गुरोररिकं तपः तत्त्वं ज्ञानपरं नास्ति तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः मनता श्रीजगन्नाथ मद्गुरु श्रीजगद्गुरु मम सर्वभूतात्मा तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः ज्ञानमूलं गुरुमूर्ति पूजमूलं गुरुपरं मन्त्रमूलं गुरुवाक्यं मोक्षमूलं गुरुकृपा आदिरनादिष्टं गुरुपरं देवतां गुरुपरतरं नास्ति तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः सप्तसागरपर्यन्तं तीर्थस्नानादिकं फलं गुरुरङ्घ्रिपयो बिन्दु सा संशयेन दुर्लभम् गुरुरुस्तेन कश्चन प्रयाणेन श्रीगुरुं शरणं व्रजे गुरुरेव जगत्सर्वं ब्रह्म विष्णु शिवात्मकं गुरुपरतरं नास्ति तस्मात् पूजये ज्ञानविज्ञानसहितं लाभ्यते गुरुभक्तिः गुरुपरतरं नास्ति ध्येयोऽसौ गुरुमार्गिभिः यस्मात् परतरं नास्ति नेति नेतीति वेष्टिः मनसा वाचसा चैव नित्यमाराधयेत् गुरुं गुरुकृपा प्रसादेन ब्रह्म विष्णु सदाशिवः समर्था प्रभवदो च केवलं गुरुसेवया देवकी नरगन्धर्व पितरो यक्ष charanam munayopi na jananti guru shushane vidim ankara garvena tapavidya valambita samsara kuara varte tatayantre yatavata namukta deva gandharva ittaro yaksha kinnara vishaya sarva siddhascha guru seva paramukha naram shuru mahadevi sarvananda pradayakam sarva sokyakaram nityam mukti mukti vidayakam Srimad Parabrahma Gurum Smarami Srimad Parabrahma Gurum Varami Srimad Parabrahma Gurum Namami Srimad Parabrahma Gurum Bhajami Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanam Murtim Gangvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Advamasyari Laksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Avatitam Srigunadaitam Sadgurum Tam Namami Nityam Sudam Nirabhasam Nirakaram Niranjanam Nityapuram Chidanandam guru-brahman mamyam Udambuje karnika manya samste Simasane samsita divya murti Yae gurum chandra kala prakasham Jipustaka bhishta varam dharanam Shvetambaram shveta vilepa pushpam Amakarpitya sitya divya shakti Mandasmitam sandra kripaniranan Anandam anandakaram prasanam Jnana swarupam nijabhora yuktam Yogendra midyam bhavaroga vedyam Srimad Gurum nityamam namami Asmi shushi chitidvamsam Nigranugramakam Kuntyam panchaviram shashvat Vasate tam namamyam Tapashira shishuklabje Dinetvam vibhujam gurum Parabhaya yutam shantam Smaretam nama purvakam Nagurorarikam 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 Shiva shasanata Shiva shasanata Shiva shasanata Shiva shasanata Shirameva shivam Shirameva shivam Shirameva shivam Shirameva shivam Mama shasanato Mama shasanato Mama shasanato Mama shasanata Evam vidam gurum yatva Jnanamupadyate swayam Sadguru prasadena Mukta amiti bhavaye Guru darshita margena Manashuddhim tukaraye Anityam kandaye sarvam Yakinchindamagocharam Eyam sarva swarupam sham Jnanam shamana uchate Jnanameya samam kuryan Anyapanta dvitiyaka Evam shubha mahadevi Surunendam karotiyam Sayanti narakam gauram Yava chandra divakaram Yava kalpanta kodehas Tavareva gurum smare Guru lokmana kartavya Vachando yari bhabave Omkarena ravaktavyam Ragneshi shekatanchana Guru ragrena vaktavyam satyam chakarachana gurum tvam krityam krityam gurum nirjitya bharata aranyene dale deshe sabhave brahma rakshasa muni pipara girvapi surva shapito yari kalam mrityu bhayad vapi guru rakshati parvati ashtatai adyashta ashata munayastata guru shapena te shigram jayamyantena samshaya mantra raja miram devi guru rityakshara dvayam smriti verartha vakyena guru saksha paramparam smriti smriti avinyaya kevalam guru sevaka deve sanyasina prokta nitare veshadarina nityam brahma nirakaram nirgunam bhoraye param sarvam brahma nirabhasam dipadipantaram prasadena amaramam nirikshaye anina guru margena svamajnanam pravartate abrahmastra vapadayantam paramama swarupakam tamam cheva pranamami jaganmayam vandeham sachidanandam Niratitam saragurum Nityam purnam nirakaram Nirgunam swama samsitam Paraparataram vyeyam Nityam anandakarakam Hridaya kashamadhyastam Shuddha svatika sanibam Svatika pratimarupam Drishyate darpane yatha Tatamani chidakaram Anandam samityutam Dushta mantra purusham Dayata shimmayam vridim Tatra spurati bhavoya Shunutam katayam yam Charam tatagamyam Namarupari varjitam Nishabjam javijariyam Sabhavam brahma parvati Yata gandha svabhavena Arpura kusumarishu Shitoshnare svabhavena Tata brahma cha shashvatam Swayam tata vido bhutva Santavyam yantra kutrachi Nita brahma ravatatra Jnanam bhavati tadrisham Guru jnanam tata krutva Ayo bhave Inde pare tata rupe Mukta nata samshaya Shri Parvati uvacha Vindam kim tu mahadeva Param kim samudharutam Rupati kim edatatyai shankara Shri Mahadeva uvacha Vindam Kundalini Shakti Paramam samudharutam Rupam binduriti yeyam Rupatitam niranjanam Inde mukta pare mukta Rupe mukta varanane Rupatite jaye muktas Sai mukta natra samshaya Param tavam viloktaye Paraparataram nanyan Sarvametan niralayan Tasya valokanam prapya Savasanga vivarjitam Ekaki nishparashantam Ishatirtha prasadatam Ladam vachana ladam Sarvagya Paramnityavar Devi Sarvamayo Buddha Sarananda Sarashanta Ramateya Trakuttachin Sadesha Punya Bhajana Muktasya Lakshanama Devi Tavagrekati Tammaya Upadesha Sata Devi Guru Margena Muktira Guru Bhakti Sata Dhyana Sakalam Thava Kirtitan Anenaya Bhave Karyam Tavadami Mahamachem Lokopakarakam Devi Lokikam Juna Bhavaye Lokika Karmano Yanti Jnana Ena Bhavarnavam Jnani Tu Bhavaye Sarvam Karmanish Karmayat Kutam Idam Tu Bhakti Bhavena Atate Shanate Harim At Sarvam Safalam Bhave Guru Gita Makam Devi Sudata Vammayoditam Bhava Vyari Vinashartam Swayameva Jape Sadam Guru Gita Ksharikam Chu Mantra Rashamimam Jape Anye Cha Vividha Mantra Alam Naranti Shorashim Guru Gita Japena Tum Sarva Papa Pashamanam Sarva Daridya Nashanam Alam Mrityu Bayaram Sarva Sankata Nashanam Yaksha Raksha Shabhutanam Sora Vyagra Vayapam Mahavyari Aram Sarvam Vibhuti Siridam Bhavem Atavamohanam Vasham Swayameva Jape Sadam Ashtrasane Chataridram Vashane Roga Sambhavam Medinyam Dukamam Noti Ashtre Bhavati Nishvalam Snajene Yana Siddhir Moksha Shigyadra Charmani Dushasane Yana Siddhi Sarva Siddhustu Kambale Shiva Durvaya Devi Asane Shubra Kambale Upabhisha Chacho Devi Javede Krakamanasa Eyam Shuklam Chashanyartham Vashiratasanam Priyem Abhichare Krishna Varnam Vitaranam Danagame Vikamastu Vashipurvamukho Jape Dakshine Maranam Proktam Ashime Chadanagama Nohanam Sarva Bhutanam Vannamoksha Bhavem Devaraja Priyakaram Sarvaloka Vashambhave Sarvesham Stambhanakaram Gunanam Chavivardhanam Dushkarmanashanam Seva Sukarma Siddham Bhave Asidam Sadaye Karyam Navagrahavayapaman Dushvagnanashanam Seva Dushvagna Phaladayamam Sarva Shanti Karam Nityam Katavadyasa Pushadam Avetavyam Karam Srinam Sobhayadayakam Sadam Ayurarogam Ishvarya Putra Putra तं चं प्राप्नोति निश्चितम् अमितस्य कामधेन कल्पना कल्पपारपा चिन्तामणि चिन्तितस्य सर्वमङ्गलकारकम् मोक्षहेतुर्जपे नित्यं मोक्षश्रियामवाप्नुयात् योगकामो जपेद्यो वे तस्य कामफलप्रदम् सपेक्षातस्तसुरश्च गानपद्यश्च वैष्णवः सेवश्च सिरिदं देवी सत्यं सत्यं न संशयः आतकाम्य जपे स्थानं तत्तयामि वरानने सागरे वा सरतीरे आतवारि हरालये हे गोष्ठे सर्वदेवालयेषु कचे ददात्रिमूले वा माते वृन्दावने च पवित्रे निर्मले स्थाने नित्यानुष्ठानचोऽपि वा निर्वेदनेन मौनेन जपामेकं समाचरे श्मशाने बाह्यभूमौ गन्धमूलान्तिके च सिद्ध्यन्ति रोदरे मूले वृक्षससानिरो गुरुपुत्र वरमूर्खात् तस्य सिद्ध्यन्ति नान्यथा शुभकर्माणि सर्वाणि दीक्षाव्रता तपंसि च शरणालनाशर्तं भावपाशानि वृत्तये ताम्बसि स्नानं तद्भाग्या कुरुते सदा एवं गुरु साक्षात् सदा स ब्रह्मवित्तमान् तस्य स्थानानि सर्वाणि पवित्राणि न संशयः पवित्रोऽस्तु स्वभवद्यत्र तिष्ठति तत्र देवागणाः सर्वे क्षेत्रेऽपि ते वसन्ति आसनस्थ शयानो वा गंस्तंसि संवरानपि अज्वरुतो गजारुदा सुप्तो वा जागृतोऽपि वा सुषिस्मसहस्रध्याने गुरुगीता जपेन तु तस्य दर्शनमात्रेण पुनर्जन्म न विद्यते क्षीरे क्षीरं घृते घृतं भिन्ने कुम्भे यथाकाशस्तथा परमात्मनि चेद्वाक्यानि जीवात्मा परमात्मनि लीयते ऐक्येन रमते ज्ञानी यत्र तत्र दिवानिशा एवं मुक्तं सर्वदा वर्तते बुधा तस्य सर्वप्रयत्नेन भावभक्तिं करोति यः सर्वसन्देहरहितो मुक्तिद्वयं तस्य शिवाग्रे च सरस्वती अनेन प्राणिना सर्वे गुरुगीता जपेन तु सर्वसिद्धिं प्राप्नुवन्ति मुक्तिं न संशयः स्वयं सत्यं मयोरितं गुरुगीता समं नास्ति सत्यं सत्यं वराणि एको देव एकदर्म एकनिष्ठा परं च गुरुपारतरं नान्यं नास्ति तत्त्वं गुरुपरम् माता धन्या पिता धन्यो धन्यो वाचाकुलं च धन्या च वसुरा देवी गुरुभक्ति सुदुर्लभा शरीरमेन्द्रियं प्राणश्चर्तस्वजानबन्धवा माता पिता कुलं देवी गुरुप्रेमा न संशयः Akapaja manakotyam Japavrata tapakriyam Tatsaram safalam devim Guru santoshamatra Idyatapo baleneva Handabhagyashtaye naram Guru sevam na kurvanti Satyam satyam varanane Vishnu maheshascha Devashi pitrukinnaram Siddhacharana yakshascha Anepi munayojana Rubhava param tirtham Anya tirtham nirartakam Sarva tirtha sayo devi Param gushtam chavartate Japena jaya manoti Chanata fadamapniyat Hina karma dyajan sarvam Janani charamani cha Japamina sanam kurvan Hina karma falapradam Guru gitam prayaneva Sangrame rupasankate Marane muktirayakam Sarva karma cha savatra Guru putra sasidyati Iram rasya no vacham Bhavagre kati janmayam Vayanena mamam tvam cha priyatmiti Swami mukya ganeshari Vishnavarinam cha parvati Manasapena vaktavyam Satyam satyam vadamyam Ati papak pachitayam Shraddha bhakti utaya cham Tavaktavyam iram devi Mama masi sada priye Abhakti vanchake durte Kakane nastike nare Manasapena vaktavyam Guru gita karachanam Samsara sagara samudra neka mantram Brahmadi deva muni pujita sira mantram Daridra dukkha bhava roga vinasha mantram Vande Mahaya Ram Guru Raja mantram Iti Shri Skanda Purane Uttarakande Ishvara Parvati Samvade Guru Gita Samapta Shri Gurudeva Charana Palamastu Nityanandaya Gurave Shisha Samsara Harine Bhakta Kaye Gadeyaya Namaste Chitsadatmane Nirvasanam Nirakanksam Savadosha Vivarjitam Niralamba Nirakantam Nityanandam Namamyam Nirmamam Nirakaram Kamalostashma Kanchanam Samaduka Sukhamadiram Avadutam Namamyam Avinashina Mamaram Ekavignaya Tattvatam Vitaraga Bhayakrodam Nityanandam Namamyam Nam Deo Name Deo Jivanamamiti Evam Vignaya Santushtam Avadutam Namamyam Samastav Kalpanamandram Yamamukta Sanathanam Iti Vignaya Santruptam Nityanandam Namamyam Jnanagniragna Karmanam Kamasankalpavarjitam Namtam Avadutam Namamyam Swabhavineva yo yogi Sukham bhogam navanshati Nadrushalava santushtam Nityanandam Namamyam Devaninda prasansavyam Yasya vikriyate manam Atma krira mananam avarutam namamiyam. Nityam jagraravasthayam sabnavajyovatishtate. Nishchitam chinmayamanam nityanandam namamiyam. Tuesham nasti priyam nasti nasti asya shubhashubham. Vedajnanam vinantam avarutam namamiyam. Jaram pashati no yastu jagapashanti tanmayam. Nityanandam namamiyam. Yogi darshana matrena bhavate bhuvanachayam. Pavanam jaganamtirtam avarutam namamiyam. Sarva pujyam sarapurnam Akhandananda Vigram Svaprakasham Siranandam Nityanandam Namamyam Nishkalam Nishkriyam Shantam Nirmalam Paramamritam Manisha Puri Vasinam Avarutam Namamyam Yoga Purnam Tapomurtim Prema Purnam Surarshanam Jnana Purnam Kripamurtim Nityanandam Namamyam. Durjana Sajjano Bhuyat Sajjana Shanti Maktuyat Shanto Muche Tabandevyo Mukta Shanyan Vimochaye Swasti Prajapyam Jayena Marge Namayin Maisha Lobramanevya Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Kale Varshatu Parajanya Prithivi Shasashalini Deshoyam Shubharaito Brahmana Santu Nirbhayam Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinam Sarve Santu Niramayam Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kashe Dukhabhag Bhavet Durgani Sarvo Bhadrani Pashyatu Sarvamanavatu Sarva Sabhatra Nandatu Vasti Matra Uta Tiche No Astu Vasti Bhovyo Jagate Purushebhya Vishvam Subhutam Suvidatram No Astu Yoge Vadrushim Asuryam Om Shanti Shanti Arati Karum Sada Guru Ki Karum Sada Guru Ki Pyare Guru Varji Arati Karum Guru Varji Arati Karum Anandakaram Guru-Nath Maharaj Ki Jai. Guru-Nath Maharaj Ki Jai. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sunday morning Satsang. And as I look out the window, we have snow flurries falling in this moment, lightly, and it's beautiful. And with the snow always comes great stillness and a reminder to all of us about the purpose of satsang, why we come to satsang, and what do we gain and attain from satsang. So we come to satsang so that we can cultivate a quiet mind, learn how to become quiet and still on the inside, but also externally as well. So just a note on the Guru Gita, so everybody knows, I'm sure for those of you who joined us, there was a little bit of a blip at the beginning. We're in the process of transitioning to a new book that came from Magod, and there's quite a few changes in there from Acharya Jaguruji. So I'm awaiting a communication from Gurudev on the reason for a couple of the changes. So as soon as I have that, which he has assured me I will have that by next weekend, he said he himself doesn't know, he needs to get the information from Jaguruji, then we'll have clarity on that. So hopefully this is the last week that we'll have that little bit of a dance, and then by next week, clarity will be there, illumination will be there, and we'll move forward with the chanting of the Guru Gita. And that brings us to our continued study of the Guru Gita, the song of the Guru, where it talks about the relationship between the Guru and disciple, and truly the meaning of all of that word by word. So we're very fortunate again this week. We have Dana who will continue with that study. So I encourage everybody to settle yourselves, whichever rooms you're in your own homes. Allow yourself to settle, allow the mind to become quiet, allow ourselves to take a pause from all of the thoughts and all the chatter, and take in and imbibe and embrace that which he will share. Thank you, Dana.
Nityanandaya Gurave Shisha Samsara Harine Bhaktakaye Kadehaya Namaste Chitsaratmane Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Sachidananda Murtaye Nishpapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase Om Sana Vavatu Sanau Bhunaktu Savilyam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Sadgurunath Maharaj Ki Jai. Good morning, everyone, wherever you are. I know you're out there. We're here in this nice warm space in the hall, and it's a Sunday, another great day for a satsang. And the subject, as you know, is the Guru Gita. The whole year we'll be trading off talks on the Guru Gita, Niteshwari and I. And I began last week with the beginning and sort of set the stage. It's a beautiful depiction is given in the beginning of the book about a conversation between Shiva and Shakti, between Shiva and his wife, Parvati. Now we must remember that Shiva and Parvati, Shiva and Shakti are really one and the same. And for the purpose of the dialogue and the purpose for universal creation itself, they become two. And from that two, Shakti then creates the whole universe and creates us. And in so creating us, creates limitation in us. And early on in the Guru Gita, it's discussed that Shiva says that there's ignorance within us. This is called Jnanam Bandha, according to Kashmir Shaivism. So we're familiar with that ignorance. We know, we feel, at least I'm familiar. I think we're familiar with that, the feeling of limitation, not the feeling of not being all pervasive and all powerful and all knowing and all everything, which is what the divine principle is, what Shiva is. And it's sort of a play of consciousness, as Baba calls it, that Shiva limits himself through his Shakti and involves himself through contracting the principles. And we get the result that we see before us. Separation from the world. We have this perceiver and the perceived. And then we have desire and aversion, and all the dramas that take place in our world are supposed to be due to this innate ignorance, which is inside of us. But the Guru comes along and shines the light of consciousness, the light of awareness, and reveals our true nature. That's the story. So in this beautiful dialogue in the beginning, it's said to be on Mount Kailash, which is the highest mountain, and it has not ever been climbed. Unconquered mountain, somewhere in India, in the very high reaches of this world. And it's said that it's actually a metaphor for the Sahasrara, that this conversation is taking place in a higher plane of consciousness. And it is, in a sense, always taking place. So it's a sort of archetypal conversation that's going on between Shiva and his wife, Parvati. So Shakti is asking him a question, and she approaches him, and the whole setting of the scene is very beautiful and very profound, and it's for the sake of all of humanity. And so I think it's good to remember and to state that the Guru Gita, although it appears to be exclusive to Siddha Yoga or Shanti Mandir or to Hinduism, that the principles stated here are actually universal. Because if they're not universal, they wouldn't be true. So these are universal underlying principles of all individuals' approach to the divine in order to know their true nature. And chanting is a wonderful thing in that we remind ourselves every day of what we are and who we are. So in the introduction to the Guru Gita, there's some comments by Baba, because Baba really loved the Guru Gita. He loved all chanting. He loved everything that invoked this feeling of oneness within us. And for Baba, the Guru Gita was the Guru, and all the tools and teachings that he gave were like his own Shakti, his own energy. And so he gave that Shakti or that Shakti pot in the form of mantra and in the form of chanting. And Baba himself says, do not be lazy in swadhyaya. Do not neglect it. Chanting and recitation of divine, sacred texts. Do not neglect it. Swadhyaya, and swadhyaya means self-study, is in fact a way to study yourself. It has been practiced from time immemorial by great beings, enlightened beings, leaders, teachers, preceptors, and fully realized masters. And they have inspired others to practice it as well. So we have been practicing chanting the Guru Gita for many years now, and all the benefits have accrued to us. He says, and one thing I wanted to say was that what we are is what we do, or what we think, and what we feel. And they say that the human body rejuvenates itself, replaces itself in a sense. All the cells are renewed in a period of time. Does anybody know what that time is? 7 years. I think we learned in biology class a long time ago. Every 7 years, the whole body is renewed. So in a sense, it applies to the mind as well. And so every day what we do is cleaning the mind, purifying the mind, and renewing it. And if we don't do that, then there's so much garbage that we go through, that we process, that purification doesn't take place. In fact, the mind gets covered with more ignorance and more confusion. The Upanishad says, Yad bhav tad bhavati. As you think, so you become. So what we think, what we feel, and what we do is what we become. So the process of chanting and mantra and meditation and all the purification processes that we know and love are for the purpose of purifying the mind and keeping it pure. It has to be washed. It has to be washed and renewed and inspired every day. So the Guru Gita, as Baba says here, is a way of doing that. He says, revered Bapuji Mahatma Gandhi never failed to hold his prayers and swadhyaya regularly. So he brings up these great beings like Tukaram, and here he brings in Mahatma Gandhi. And we'll get back to the conversation in a second, but I was very inspired when I read this story of Mahatma Gandhi, because here he was, a short, sort of diminutive stature Indian gentleman who had taken it upon himself to fight for Indian independence in a peaceful, nonviolent way. And the strength of his conviction was due to his devotion to Lord Ram. He chanted Ram mantra continuously, and he carried the Bhagavad Gita with him. So these were his tools, these were his strengths. Every time he went to prison, he would go there willingly because he was on this quest of freeing India. He would go there with the Gita and he would read it regularly, and he would chant Ram's name. He's always doing the japa of Ram mantra. It was his strength. It was what carried him across. It was with him always, never left him. So that was his connection to his guru. And there's a story I recall that from Freedom at Midnight, a book I read a long time ago. It said that Gandhi went to Parliament in London. He was called there to represent India in this conversation that was taking place about India's freedom. And is right in the midst of this process. And Gandhi, he didn't put on Western clothes. He went there in his white dhoti that was made from khadi, handmade cotton from his own spinning wheel. He wore these clothes and his chappals, his sandals, and he went there and he had his wire round glasses, and he must have been quite a sight. The whole of Parliament is there and dressed in their finest suits, and here's Gandhi dressed in his common Indian clothing. And he went there proudly, and you know that he would have gone there with the name of Ram on his lips. So he had a lot of strength and a lot of charisma, and he spoke very boldly and strongly, and impressed many people there. And they could see that they had a formidable opponent that they would have to negotiate with him. There was a reporter that was really also very struck by Gandhi's presence there, and he went up to the assistant, that was attendant that was helping Gandhi, and he says, how does he do it? He's saying all this and he's not using any notes. It's just coming out of him. And the attendant said, well, for you and I, it's difficult, but for Gandhi, what he thinks, what he feels, and what he says are all the same. So he doesn't need any notes. We think one thing, feel another, and say a third. So we need notes to keep track. So this is why Baba mentions him here, that he was also impressed by his strength. He said he never failed to hold his prayer or swadhyaya regularly. The seers say that it should be held every day with unfailing regularity of the sun and the moon. meaning it should be happening in the morning, at midday, and at sundown, as it is here at the ashram and all ashrams, with deep feeling and reverence. Swadhyaya increases inner radiance, mental vigor, and agility. So these are good things. Increases inner radiance. As Baba or Gurudev would say, we put on makeup to make ourselves look radiant. But if we have inner radiance, which is what Swadhyaya increases, then the radiance comes from within. Mental vigor and agility, very useful things, right? As we get older, we feel our mental agility may be leaving us and the memory may be sliding. So we need extra Swadhyaya for that. And keep chanting the hold like Gandhi did to that mantra, to that chanting, to that regular practice. That which we do every day is what stays with us. So every day, the same time, to do this is what he's encouraging us to do. He says, the practice is far more uplifting than indulging in futile thoughts. So many futile thoughts go through our minds. An unnecessary mental activity or following worthless tendencies. So we know what our worthless tendencies might be. And so we stop following them, replace them with swadhyaya, replace them with mantra repetition, with japa. Swadhyaya embraces all aspects of yoga and grants all its rewards. So all the rewards of yoga are given to us by the practice of swadhyaya that's being recommended here. By the practice of the Guru Gita, whatever it might be, Vishnu Sahasranam, the Devi Stotram, etc. So all these deities become pleased with us, and they're all really, as we know, we see Shakti and Shiva, it's all one. It all starts from one sense. It's not a multiple deity phenomenon, really. It's just a sense of pure oneness, and that's what we are. Everyone sits in a clean place, in the lotus, perfect or easy posture, free from care, without moving or looking around. So it's a real focus, and we know how restless we get, and we're scratching here. All kinds of thoughts go through our minds. We're thinking while we're chanting, like, wow, that's amazing, you can do that. We do it, right? It's like, let me just work this one thing out while I'm chanting. It's like, stop it. So you just keep having to bring back and use the dharana, the sense of one-pointedness and focus that we have. So without moving or looking around. The book is held in the right hand, with the left hand on the left knee in a lion pose. Both eyes are focused on the mantra text, and the ears are attuned to the neighboring voices as well as one's own, chanting the divine names. So it's so highly recommended that Tukaram says, Nama Sankirtana Sadhana Paisope Jalatila Pape Janma Tariche Nalage Sayasa Zave Wanantara Sukhayeto Gara Narayana. Tukaram says, chanting is so easy. Chanting is so easy and so pleasing. He said it's much, much easier than all the other practices that are prescribed. You don't have to do these difficult practices. For Tukaram, the name was all he needed. So he was always chanting his mantras, always doing swadhyaya. He said, by just chanting, you'll find that over time, God will come to your own house. And the symbolism is obvious, that God comes and lives within your heart, where he's already there anyway. You become aware of that. So Baba always talks about Tukaram Maharaj as being an exemplary advocate and practitioner of mantra. And he achieved realization by that, and he was one of the great proponents of devotion and bhakti. And we'll talk about him later in the show. So we have this conversation, this wonderful conversation between Shiva and Shakti. So imagine this. Here we are at Mount Kailash and they're talking to each other. How is that possible? But these things happen. These things are real. The Puranas are real stories, and they're real events, real deities, real gods and goddesses that all emerge from the Supreme Consciousness. Ramakrishna was asked about that. Are the deities real? And he said, yes, they're real. They're real. And Baba said that. I read that recently in one of his books. And Ramakrishna said, just as water takes different forms, it's steam, and it's water, and it's ice, that no problem, the divine consciousness takes all these forms. And they have different responsibilities to preside over the universe, and they can be propitiated, and we can get the blessings of the Devi, of Vishnu, who's the sustainer of all of this, and the Devi that bestows grace upon us, and Lord Shiva, who gives divine knowledge. But is all this Shiva, this supreme principle. So with this dialogue, the Devi asks this question. O Shri Devi Vacha. So the Devi says, Om Namo Deva Devesya Parat Para Jagadguru Sadashiva Mahadeva Guru Diksham Pradehi Me Kena Margena Bho Swami Dehi Brahma Mayo Bhaved Tvam Kripam Kuru Me Swami Namami Charano Tava. So the goddess says, O Lord, O God of gods, and this is from the book here, who is higher than the highest. He's higher than the highest. So then, he must be the highest. You can't get any higher than the highest. So this is the way they sort of dramatize and eulogize in this way. You're higher than the highest. Oh, I bow to you, O eternal Shiva, who is the guru of the entire universe and the greatest among the gods. Please give me initiation on the path of the guru. She says, Guru Diksham Pradehi Me. Give me Guru Diksha. Devi, Shakti is asking for initiation. Now we know Shakti, the guru is, according to Shaivism, Guru Parameshwari Anugrahika Shakti. The guru himself is the Shakti. So here's the great irony in this whole conversation. It's like this one entity has become two. And now the second entity is talking about a third entity. There's this whole oneness play here that's going on. One becomes two, becomes three now. And we know that the guru is the grace bestowing power. The grace bestowing power reveals oneness again. So that's the whole amazing irony and beauty of this. Because if you're not already one, no one can make you one. Like she says, Kena Margena Bo Swami Dehi Brahma Mayo Bhaved Tvam Kripam Kuru Me Swami Namami Charano Tava. She says, Kena Margena Bo Swami. O Master, O Swami. She's talking to Shiva. She's talking to her husband. By which path? Kena Margena. By which path can the individual who's in a body, Dehi Brahma Mayo Bhavet, can the individual who's in the body become one with Brahman or become one with you? How can the Dehi, the dweller in the body, become one with you, with Brahman? And we think of Brahman as being, we're up on Kailash, and this conversation is taking far, far away, in a long distance, long time ago, in the ages of the Puranas. But this is happening now, within us. The conversation between Shiva and Shakti, the highest level of consciousness, is say, how can the individual in this body who's in a state of ignorance of you, how can he know his oneness with you? Amazing, right? Kena margena bosomi dehi brahma mayoba. How can he become one with, he says Brahman, but Brahman and Shiva are one, are interchangeable terms. How can he become one with you? By what methods? By what path? Now we know that if the individual is not already one with Brahman, there's no magic trick or anything that can happen. Because if you're not already one and you become one, then you could unbecome one, right? It inherently, logically has to be that you're already one. And there's a veil, there's ignorance that's keeping you from knowing you're one. So this is what she's really asking. How can we remove this ignorance that's keeping the individual who's in the body, who thinks he's the body, doesn't know he's you? How does that happen? How can we make that happen? By what path, by what method can that happen? She says, Tvam kripam kurume swamin namami charanotava. O Master, have compassion. The Devi is compassion itself. Right? That's what the Devi is. And that's only one of the things. She's divine love herself. She's consciousness itself. Oh Master, have compassion on me. So this dialogue, this duality, this play of duality is quite extraordinary, really. And this dialogue really is a manifestation of grace. So just to hear this conversation, we're uplifted, we're up there at Mount Kailash, my Kailash. And we're enjoying this dialogue, and we're seeing, okay, it must be possible for me, an individual in this body, to know my oneness with Shiva. And I already, if we think about it, we know I must already, if it's possible, it must already be true. She says, Mama rupasi devi tvam tvatprityartam vadamyam lokopakaraka prashno nakinapi kurtapura. So this is Ishvara says, so Shiva says, O Goddess, you are my very own form. Now he's stating a fact that we've already talked about. O Goddess, you are me. We're not separate. Just as a husband and wife are really one, right? Or should be, if they're really married. Shiva and Shakti are truly one. That's a fact. That's a fundamental fact of all philosophy, at least Indian philosophy, and most other philosophies. There is a play. There's Shiva and Shakti in all philosophies. You'll find it if you look for it there. So he says, Mama rupasi devi tvam. You are my form. Rupa, you are my form. You are my very form, rupasi, my very own form. So all form, as we know, all form that manifests in the universe, according to Kashmir Shaivism, is Shakti. As Baba said, this world is a play of Shakti or consciousness, and it's called spanda. It's vibrating. The scientists have discovered spanda, the vibration of energy and everything. But it's not just inert matter vibrating, it's conscious energy. It's both prakasha, full of light, and it knows itself. So it's aware. Everything is aware. There's awareness everywhere. And there's bliss everywhere, because that's the nature of this prakasha, vimarsha. So when he says, you are my very form, he knows that if Shakti is the very form of Shiva, having become the universe and the individual, he's saying that's what's here, that's what's happening, and that's what's always happening. Loko pakaraka prashno nakinapi kurtapura. He says, you are my very form, and for your happiness, to please you. Like Shiva wants to please Shakti, like the husband wants to please the wife, the wife wants to please the husband. This is the play between the Shiva and Shakti, husband and wife. And to please you, he said, like, I'll do anything. He said, I will speak, he says. To please you, I am speaking. So the fact that Shiva is speaking and is giving this response is a fantastic, wonderful thing for all of humanity. So he's about to give the answer. But he says this question, which is for the benefit of the whole world. Loko pakaraka prashno. for the benefit of Loka, the whole world, the benefit of that, I will answer this, I will speak. He says, by the way, this question has not been asked ever before. Really? You go, wow, that amazing. So in a way, since this is oneness, this is the oneness scene, that it's all one. This is the first time. It is the first time for all time. So this is the first time it's been asked, and I'm going to give the answer out of love for you. For the benefit of all mankind, I give this answer. So Shiva begins to speak. And he says, Durlabham trishu lokeshu tachunushva vadamyaham gurum vina brahmananya satyam satyam varanane. He says, I will tell you about that principle. That principle. Now she's asked, what does she ask for? That's the answer to that question, but also Guru Diksham Pradehi Me. She asked for Diksha, Guru Diksha. So she's asked, first of all, about the Guru, and then she's asked by what means can the individual become Brahman. And that's the whole story here. He says, listen, that principle, which is rare in all the three worlds, so that the answer to this question is extremely rare. And that Guru principle is extremely rare. It is, so listen very carefully. So here's a lesson here for us too, that what we should always listen. And we should listen in particular to the inner voice of consciousness, and we should listen carefully to the Guru. The disciple is one that listens, right? He's hearing the sound of Vishnu's word, to Shiva's word. He's listening to the conscience. He's listening to the voice of consciousness that tells us right from wrong. He says, listen, and I will tell you about that principle that is rare in all the three worlds. He says, oh, beautiful one, this is true, and this is true. And now we're about to get the beginning of the answer. There's 182 verses here, so it's a long response. But the essence of it has already been given. Gurum vina brahmananya satyam satyam varanane. He says, this is the answer. Ready? God is not different from the Guru. Oh, beautiful one, this is true, this is true. I almost missed it there. So this is his first teaching. God is not different from the Guru. He hasn't quite given the response, that he's pointing us in the direction, right? God is not different from the Guru. You asked the question, first you wanted to be initiated in Guru Diksha, but you also asked, Kena Margena Bhoswami Dehi Brahma Mayo Bhavat. How can the individual in this body, the Dehi, the dweller in the body, realize his oneness with Brahman? So he says, first of all, Guru Vina Brahma Nanyat. There was no difference between the Guru and Brahman. So he's saying, the Guru is me. He's Brahman, he's Shiva. No difference between the Guru and me. That's the foremost idea here. He says, Satyam Satyam Varanane. So that's the first clue. So the obvious response by us in hearing this is that I don't know where God is. I don't know where Shiva is. I don't know Brahman. But I can find a Guru, hopefully. So it's encourage her to find the Guru. Get initiated, like she wants it. Guru Diksham Pradehi Me. Give me initiation. So he's given that much. He's given that much. And that's pretty much everything. Because if we seek out the Guru, and then we found Brahman, right? Because they're one and the same. So this this equating is very critical and pivotal in the story. And then he seems to go on a little bit of a detour, like a disclaimer. Because he says, Veda Shastra Puranani Itihasadikani cha Mantrayantrari Vidyascha Smriti Rucha Dhanadikam Shaiva Shakta Gamadini Anyani Vividani cha Apabramsha Karaniha Jivanam Branta Chetasam. He says, so here he starts talking about some of my favorite things. And he says, don't get caught up in those things. He says the Vedas, the scriptures, the Puranas, like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, mantras, yantras, knowledge, texts, practices to distract one's enemies. So there's all kinds of things available. And especially these days on the internet, everything's available. And to learn it, you don't really even have to have a guru. You just need to have a computer and go in a internet access. So, which is great for those of us who love these things, because you can go and find quotations and stories and download texts. And since we've been initiated by the guru, we're authorized to do those things. However, what he's saying is giving a big disclaimer. He says, don't try this on your own. Don't go into all these things. That's the bottom line that I've concluded. You can get very much deluded and confused by going into all these texts and methods and processes and secret mantras and tantras and yantras and everything. And an unqualified, uninitiated individual can become completely confused there. It's like when you try to put together some IKEA furniture. Once I had a kitchen job, and we usually would make our cabinets or order them like first-class cabinets made in a cabinet shop. One day, actually, my architect friend, he wanted to do a special thing with these cabinets. So he was on a low budget, so we went to IKEA and he bought back all these boxes of IKEA stuff. You know, it comes with the little tools and stuff, and it comes even with directions. And I'm one that really hates directions. I just start putting them together, and you know, inevitably something's backwards or you forgot a part or whatever. Fortunately, this time we had this young kid that was working with us, and very smart kid, and he loved directions. He would read the directions for us, and in a way he was like playing the part of the guru in this case. So he would put one together for us, so I could put this door together, this drawer, and it has to be all in the right order, and because he'd done this several times before, and me and another journeyman carpenter, they're working together, right? We're supposed to be the experts anyway. He's teaching us how to do this, and we go, Joe, where does this go? And so you can tell that need for an expert if you're doing anything. You're building something, you're learning something, you need a guru, right? It's a principle that's universal. You want to learn to build a house or study biology, study law, study history, study anything. You need a teacher to keep you getting confused and off tracks. So he said Vedas, scriptures, Puranas, mantras, yantras, knowledge, texts, practices to distract one's enemies, and so on, as well as Shaivite and Shakta treatises and other scriptures written in ungrammatical languages that can possibly confuse people's mind. And he continues. He said, Yajna vratam tapodanam japa stirtam tatevacha guru tattvam avijnaya mudaste charate jana. He says, likewise, a foolish person who does not understand the guru principle practices fire rituals, vows of fasting, austerities, even charity is mentioned here, and goes on pilgrimages. Now, why? This just jumped out at me, charity. What would be wrong with that? one of the predominant reasons that this sort of giving this warning, this disclaimer, right in the beginning, before he really starts into the explanation about the guru, he's giving these warning in a sense, because the biggest thing that can happen here is the ego gets enlarged. You know, the whole idea here is, recall that we're trying to figure out how the Kena Margena Boswami Dehi Brahma Mayo Bhaved. How can the individual who's identified with this body, who's completely convinced I'm this body and I'm this person and my ego is talking to me all the time and telling me, you're doing okay, you're not doing okay, you're a real schmuck today and that's terrible what you do. This ego is going. And so when somebody takes these things and starts performing them and gets good at it, without having the grace of the guru that is eroding ego continuously, it can turn into a real difficult situation. And this is one of the dramas of spirituality that happen continuously. So that essentially what's being said is that you need a guru to learn these things so you don't get confused. And even if you don't get confused, your ego doesn't get so enlarged so that it becomes an obstacle to letting the ego go. Because the idea must be that in order to know your oneness with Brahman, your ego has to dissolve. There's not room for two eyes. It has to dissolve. That's one of the main teachings in yoga. And so this it's almost like this is a talent to be able to let your ego go so that you can meditate on the high principle, on your true nature. And so that's the whole process of sadhana and that purification that we were talking about, that chanting and mantra perform for us. Well, once there's we'll call him Sheikh Nasruddin. Sheikh Nasruddin was a boatman. He had the job as a boatman, and he's taking people across this river, back and forth. And this very educated pundit came and said, I need passage across the river. He said, okay, hop in, give me 5 rupees. Give him the rupees, and he's there. And then he started a conversation with him, and the pundit realized that this Nasruddin was a really uneducated, simple guy, and he was like somebody that had fell under this spell of these aspects of Vedic thought, they're really the treasures of Vedic wealth of India's spiritual culture. I mean, Shiva is not demeaning these practices because these arise from him. And Baba loved these things and performed yajnas and taught scripture to us and lived in awe and appreciation of all this. His whole ashram was full of all this. But he was the guru and he was teaching us. So we understood. And at the same time, while he was teaching us, he's undermining the ego. Undermining that all the time. But this pundit hadn't had the benefit of a guru to undermine his ego. So he was noticing this poor boatman. He was saying, did you learn, do you know any grammar? Do you know any Sanskrit grammar? He said, no, I never learned that. Do you know logic? He said, no, I don't know logic. So Nasruddin is saying, no, I don't know that. I don't know this. And more the pundit is just more disgusted. Why did I even get in this boat with this guy? And only Nasruddin turns to him, did you learn how to swim? And he says, why? No, I never learned how to swim. He says, well, because our boat's sinking, there's a hole in it. So this is the thing. In a nutshell, this is why an example of what can happen if you study all these things. If you go online, you start learning all these occult kinds of things that are very complex and very subtle. You need the guru, and you need primarily to learn to swim. So the guru teaches you how to swim, and what that means to me is he teaches you to make contact with your true nature, to let your ego go and practice meditation. So we could say swim, the ability to swim is the ability to meditate. Because meditate, as Baba said, on yourself. Your God dwells within you as you. And then once we have this initiation, this tutor, this guide, this instructor in the form of the guru who sheds light on these subjects, and gradually he bestows them upon us. So we've learned about the Vedas, we've learned about Kashmir Shaivism, Vedanta, the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the Guru Gita, through the grace. So the Guru has taken us and said, I'll teach you, I'll instruct you in this way, and you get initiated into these things. So that's why Shiva says, Guru Tatvam Avijñāya Mudaste Charate Jana. A foolish person who does not understand the Guru principle practices these fire rituals, vows of fasting, austerities and charity, and goes on pilgrimages. So this is a big part of this beginning here. That's very, very important. Now, I mentioned Tukaram earlier. And Tukaram was harassed by the people like the Pandit in the boat, and all the whole Bhakti movement from the 13th century to the 16th century. There was a large movement in India that was whose purpose was, and it was sort of the purpose was carried on by different poet saints in Maharashtra and in different parts of India, and even you could say there was quite a poetic devotional movement that also was taking place in Europe during that time. But Tukaram Maharaj was a proponent of having the scriptural knowledge that was kind of locked up in the hands of these pundits that insisted that everything should be taught in Sanskrit, and that the common language of Hindi and the different dialects around all over India shouldn't be used to express these high, sublime teachings. That only they, so there was that kind of attitude going on, and people like Tukaram Maharaj were translating that Vedic knowledge because they had a level of attainment that made them worthy. So the divine was speaking through them, and their poems were expressing these Vedic principles about oneness and about mantra and about the Guru and about chanting and about Dharma and righteousness and right living, and in a very poetic, simple terminology. He was expressing this in his village, and there was you can see the movie, the Tukaram movie, 1936, a wonderful movie that actually got awards at a film festival in Europe in 1936. Anyway, it's very funny. I've watched it at least 20 times, maybe more. But there's a scene in which the jealous other, let's see, Tukaram's opponent in the village, who's also tries to pretend that he's written some of Tukaram's songs and so on. So this is basically a true story that actually happened. But he calls the head pundit in the whole county or district, who comes to judge Tukaram, and as he's walking down the street with some of his attendants, he hears Tukaram's poems being sung by the blacksmith, by the farmers, by the vegetable sellers, by the fruit sellers. They're all singing his songs, and the songs are beautiful melodies, and he's quite impressed. But then he's thinking, oh, this is not right. No, this is not right. He's polluting the Vedic knowledge by putting it in a common Marathi language. Oh, this is not good. So they have a trial, and he's taken before them, and he's so humble, and he's so meek, and he sings some songs, And they say, no, you can't do this. You have to stop. You have to stop all this. You can't sing any of these songs anymore. And Tukaram says, but I must, I need to. This is just coming through me. And he sings to this Brahmin priest, this Pandit. He says, Vela nanta bolila, ito arta itu kachi sadila, vito baches charana jave, nija nishta nama gave, sakala chantra vichara, adi tu kachi nidara, atara purani siddhanta, tukamani et hachi heta. So at that last verse in the movie where he says, Atara Purani Siddhanta Tuka Mani Hachi Heta, which means all the 16 Puranas express this, which is that Vedananta Bolila Arta Dukachi Sadila Vitobachi Sharana Jave Nijanishta Nama Gave. The Vedas speak endlessly. So we're talking about the Vedas here. This is the disclaimer that Shiva is giving, that be careful with doing this on your own. And Tukaram has really learned how to swim. And this is coming through him in the common language. And he's sharing it with everyone, regardless of whether they know Sanskrit or not. Because he says to him here, all the 16 Puranas, all the Vedas, they all say only this. The essence of it is this. He says, surrender to God and sing God's name with great faith. So this is swimming, right? So he says, all boiled down to this. And when he says, Tukamani Hachi Heta, this all boils down to this. Tukaram says, this is the teaching. The Brahmin priest says, ha! And he just freaks out. And he says, this is no good. And anyway, so he gets taken to the river, and they take all of his poems and they dunk them in the river. And Tukaram sits there. The poems have been immersed in the water. He's been told he can't write any more poetry, and his poetry is immersed in the water, so basically it's gone. And all the villagers that love Tukaram and are enjoying this wonderful teaching that's coming through him in the form of his poems that we enjoy even today, because a miracle happened. And Tukaram told his wife that he was going to fast until either the poems came back to him or he was dead. So we have the scene in the movie. The wife is sitting with him, the children are sitting there, he's sitting by the banks of the river, he's fasting for 12 days, 13 days, and finally there's music playing, and suddenly a Devi arises out of the water. Now we can think of the Devi here, the Devi on Mount Kailash and Shiva. Well, she lifts the 2 bundles of the poems out of the water. That's Tukaram's poems have been dropped in the water, and they come out. She carries them out, and the people bring them out. And everybody celebrates, and the poems are dry, and they've been saved. And so that knowledge that's in those poems, in that common language, that's communicating this devotional practice and the practice of japa and mantra and swadhyaya is there. And at the same moment, next moment, they bring the Pandit who's screaming in pain. And because of the curse that he gave, because of the judgment he gave on Tukaram, his body is burning. All of his skin is burning. So he jumps in the river to try to stop the burning, but it doesn't help. And Tukaram takes him, pulls him out of the water, puts him on his lap, and begins stroking him. And as he's doing that, he's saying, Panduranga, 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 Panduranga. And the Pandit loses, the heat goes away. He becomes cool, he becomes calm, he becomes peaceful, and he looks at Tukaram and he falls at his feet. He said, I was so wrong. I was so wrong. Look at the power you have. Look at the penalty that came to me for having this judgment upon you. So this would be an example of Guru Tattvam Avignaya Mudaste Charite Jana, the delusion that can come. So this Pandit is cured of the heat in his body, the penalty that's been given to him. And he's cool, and he's calm, and he's surrendered. His huge ego from being having the most knowledge, having the most information, having an exclusive property of this, which belongs to everyone, is gone. He's humbled. He falls at Tukaram's feet, and the story becomes Tukaram's disciple. And he's the one who wrote the arati that is sung to Tukaram Maharaj every day in Maharashtra, in the places that worship Vithoba. So this whole idea is very, very important, and we need, as Baba said, a quote I gave last week maybe, that we need the passport given by the Guru that's here in the Yajna Chakra. So the Guru gives us, with initiation, he gives us the passport to that scene in Kailash, in the dialogue between Shiva and Parvati. He also gives us the passport, ability to understand the scriptures, to practice the japa, and to have the mantra awaken our Shakti within us and stays with us and protects us. Because the mantra is that manana trayate iti mantraha. So the Guru Gita has a protective power, and the mantra that we're given by the Guru is initiative power and protective power as well. So all this is given to us by the Guru. And this is why the whole idea here is expressed in the Bhakti Sutras. It says, the great beings enhance the sanctity of sacred places. So sacred places are pilgrimage places that he's talking. We go on pilgrimage, japa, tirthams go on pilgrimages, etc. They enhance the sanctity of sacred places. So if you go on a pilgrimage place and you have an ego about it, then you may not get anything there. It's really dependent on the state of your mind. And if you go with a holy attitude, blessed by being awakened by the Guru, when you go there, you really sense the divine presence there. And better yet, if you go with the Guru himself, he enhances the sanctity of that sacred place. This sacred place, is enhanced by the Guru. It's enlivened by the Guru. That's why this place is sacred. And we see the pictures, we see the statues, we see the lineage portrayed here in these images. And this is really just the supreme consciousness in the form of the Gurus. It says here in the Bhakti Sutras as well, it adds glory to all actions as well. So we have sacred actions like japa, like singing the Guru Gita, like doing yoga, any of those things. So the Guru's presence will add sanctity and glory to those actions. Quite an interesting idea, right? So when you have the Shakti awaken, then everything gets sanctified in your life. Lends charming and compelling authority to the scriptures. So we're able to read these scriptures and understand them, talk about them, think about them because of the awakened Shakti. That's the idea. A few years ago, I was fortunate enough to go on a little yatra with Gurudev to South India, and he was there because his father had passed away a year prior. And it's traditional that you go on a yatra, and he went to his family, his father's family's Durga temple, amongst other places. But we got to that temple, and we went inside, and whenever you're with the Guru, there's a sort of a sense of literally doors open, but internally doors open. because you sort of get a VIP status on a number of levels, I think. So I went into this temple, and it was quite a wonderful feeling there. It was like a dark, small place, and there was the deity there in the darkness and with the candlelight. And I always like to find a place to sit and meditate in such situations. So there was a little spot towards the back I found in the corner, and I turned, and Gurudev was also sitting there with me. And I just felt so privileged and happy to be there and to experience the peace that he was enhancing the sanctity of the sacred place with. So it was like a real peak moment in this yatra to have that, and I realized the truth of that, this shloka, that the Guru adds sanctity to sacred places. They're already sacred, but when a sage comes there, when a Guru comes there, something special is being added. And in fact, then you can interpolate it as say that anywhere the Guru goes, it becomes a sacred place. Anywhere we go, if we have that kind of state of consciousness and awareness, we can add sanctity to sacred places, glory to all actions, lend a charming and compelling authority to scriptures. So when Baba talked about the scriptures, he talked from his own experience, and it was so uplifting, so sublime. Here he was talking, because the scriptures are really talking about this experiences of Kena Margena Boswami Dehi Brahmamayo Bhavet. How can the individual become Brahman? So that's all Baba ever talked about. He would talk about it in all different ways and tell these stories and tell these quotes and everything and have so much fun with it, and that we'd all be kind of floating in a way. So it was adding that charming and compelling authority to the scriptures. So that's what to me, the bottom line is that there's no condemnation here, obviously, because it is, the Vedas come from Shiva himself. They're written by Veda Vyasa, but they're revealed. And all the scriptures are communicated to us, given to us for the purpose of attaining that. So it's not to say that we shouldn't study these things, but we should study them under the auspices of a guru and become initiated there, and that is all revealed to us. So we've come to a nice place in the Guru Gita, where he's given us the disclaimer. You need instructions. Not only instructions, you need somebody that knows how to do it, someone that's been there before. And then you can realize your oneness with Brahman. You can become free of limitation, free of the ego, free of the idea, I am this body, which is crazy, really, if you think about it, because everybody is, this is the normal state of mind. This is normal. But we find out, well, no, it's not normal, because you are actually Shiva. The Guru says, Tattvamasi, thou art that. And you go, really? And it takes some time. It takes some, we're all working at it. But the ego gets eroded, and all this is revealed to us through regular swadhyaya, through regular practice. The darshan is given to us. Baba says, in our present state, our awareness flows outward because of the limitation of the mind and senses. So this is a normal state of mind. I'm in this body, I'm limited by this body, my mind flows outward, my senses, everything is focused out there. We think of ourselves as the body and identify with the experiences of our senses. We do not know the all-pervasiveness of consciousness, nor do we know our own divinity. But once Kundalini is awakened and begins to work within us, our mind and senses turn inward and we become aware of our true nature. So it's quite simple. Once Kundalini is awakened and begins to work within us, our mind and senses turn inward. We learn how to swim. We become aware of our true nature. The Pratyabhijna says, Bala Labhe Vishwam Atmasat Karoti. When one acquires the strength of Kundalini, Baba says, one is able to assimilate the entire universe into oneself. One no longer remains a limited, bound creature. One achieves total union with God. Sadgurunath Maharaj Ki Jai.
So this concludes our Sunday morning satsang. Thank you all for joining us. And for those of you who may not have a copy of that Guru Gita study book, you're welcome to purchase that through the gift shop. We have several copies available. So you can do that by contacting or emailing Walden at shantimandir.com, and we can happily mail you your copy. Also, we have the upcoming Mahashivaratri Intensive. That will be on March 11th here at the ashram for those of you who will join us in person. And on March 12th, we will be sending out the intensive, the YouTube link to everyone, and then that will be valid for the following 10 days so that you have 2 weekends again to be able to view it. So for registration on that, you can go to the Shanti Mandir website. Both of the tickets are up there, in person and virtual, so feel free to register for that. Also, a reminder to everyone that if you wish to sign up for any of the individual pujas with Bhaskar in Ganesh Puri at the seat of Bhagavan Nityananda's temple there, the Samadhi Shrine, or here at Shanti Mandir Walden with Prabal Mishra, you can also do that online as well. I think with that, we are all complete. Everyone is invited to come up for darshan, followed by lunch prasad down at Namaste. Thank you all for joining us. Sadhgurunad Maharaj Ki Jai. And for those of you here in the U.S., enjoy the Super Bowl.